Good afternoon, Chicago. I'm Sasha-Ann Simons, and this is Reset. Today is a very special occasion. Chicago's Mayor Brandon Johnson is spending the entire hour with us to discuss the latest happenings in and around our city. And we've got a lot to cover. On the docket, the city's finances, public safety, and how the Trump administration is affecting us here in Chicago. Mayor Johnson's here to answer my questions and yours. Do you have a concern that you want him to address? Do you want to know more about the direction of the city? Pick up your phone now and give us a call with your question at 866-915-WBEZ. That's 866-915-WBEZ. Now, my one condition, respect is a must this hour. Whether you are excited, passionate, or maybe frustrated, I ask that you ask your question to the mayor respectfully. Keep your questions brief so that we can get to as many of you as possible. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, welcome back to Reset.
Hey, thank you for having me, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to Chicago.
Yeah, I've wanted to do this for so long. I wanted to give our listeners a chance to connect with you directly. So I'm so grateful for you accepting this invitation. Why did you want to join us?
Well, this is important for me to get a better sense of how Chicago is experiencing this particular political moment, how they are experiencing, almost the first 2 years of my administration. Coming out of the organizing movement, I used to have the privilege of being able to go door to door to talk to people and get a better sense of how we're doing and if the direction in which we're going and speaks to the aspirations and the hopes of people. So this gives me an opportunity to do that, even though I'm not able to knock on doors like I used to. So this is my way to be able to assess how Chicago is experiencing this particular moment.
Let's dig into some of the issues here. City Council was supposed to vote on a curfew ordinance, but several questions regarding implementation of it are sort of still unanswered. What do you think, Mayor, of the move to hold off on that vote?
There is also some questions around the constitutionality around it as well. Mm-hmm. So what it expresses is that the concerns that I've had, and I've had from the very beginning, that one, there is no evidence that lowering the curfew reduces, teen violence or even these large gatherings, right? So there's been 12 incredibly rigorous studies that have looked into this issue. And again, all of them have come back emphatically that what was proposed initially just doesn't get at solving the problem. Mm-hmm. And so what I believe is happening is that as much as we know that community safety and public safety is the top priority of all of us, we have to do things at work. Just simply forcing or shifting the problem somewhere else, that's not who we are as a city. That's not what my administration represents. I've brought people together and asked folks to continue to dig in to figure out how we can actually approach all aspects of community safety and not just limiting it to policing and curfew.
Yeah. Well, so you've been skeptical then of proposals leading up to now to bring the curfew up to an earlier time. Are you on board with this one that gives CPD much more power to enact these curfews?
Well, again, the concern is the constitutionality around this and if this is something that would even be effective. Here's what we do know, that curfew violations have gone down 75% since 2018. So there are far and far less individuals who are breaking curfew, right? So this is something that I do know that in a particular area or particular areas of the city where large gatherings have led to violence, my ultimate goal is to make sure that we prevent these occurrences from happening, in which in many cases the Chicago Police Department, working with community organizations, we do prevent these gatherings from happening. Now look, 1, 2 are too many, and we want to make sure that young people are safe. But here's the thing, I have made it my life's mission to invest in young people as a public school teacher, as a parent, and Lord knows I have 3 children, so I'm investing more in children than I ever have in my life, particularly with one who is leaving for college in another year. But what we do know is when we invest in people, we create opportunities and we have to hold people accountable. So my presentation is very simple: accountability as well as opportunity. And the more opportunities that we create for people, it holds all of us accountable. This is not just a policing issue. This has to be a matter in which the entire city of Chicago embraces so that we ensure maximum security and support and safety for everyone.
Let's jump to the phone lines. We've got Ramona from Albany Park with a related question. Hi, Ramona. What's your question for the mayor?
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Hi, Mayor. I actually agree with you that I don't think curfews are the answer. I think it's stuffs on people's freedom, and I agree with that. But you do talk about opportunity and alternatives for youth, which also agree with. But I've done some FOIA-ing, and you have the Chicago Youth Service Corps, who are, supposed to get kids involved in things, civic and all that. And I can't find anything that they've gotten any real money. The few things that I did get says that some of them were sent to go protest for the CTU as part of civic engagement. That seems like kind of a BS use of funds for that. And then DFSS and city microgrants for serving youth. Can't find where any of that money went in the last 18 months.
Okay, so let's get a response for you, Ramona. What do you have to say to that, Mayor?
Well, thank you for the question, Ramona, and I appreciate her agreeing with me. Ramona, and I mean this tongue in cheek, but it almost sounds like you were surprised that you agree with me. So I appreciate that. I actually agree with you, Mayor. So I appreciate you understanding and continue to message that we have to do the things that work. What I can say is, though, through our One Summer Chicago, we work with multiple community-based organizations. So, the investments that we are making, for instance, in our summer jobs, 29,000 of them, all of those positions will not be positions that work within our sister agencies or city departments, right? We're working with community organizations, whether it's, Youth Guidance and Build and Kenwood Oakland Community Organization. There are a number of organizations that are receiving the resources from the city of Chicago to be able to employ and hire young people. I'm not sure of the specific matter in which you reference. Happy to look into that, but I'm absolutely confident that the resources that we have put forward to go into a variety of community-based organizations, faith-based organizations that are hiring our young people, and not just for summer jobs, but even year-round positions. So I'm going to continue to make those critical investments and hold people accountable to ensure that they're getting to the people who are closest to those who actually need those investments.
Mm-hmm. So if this ordinance proposed by Alderman Hopkins is never passed on this teen takeover, teen trend issue, what are the alternatives?
Well, I think we have to remain vigilant and being preventative. We have to create as many opportunities for young people as we possibly can. That is the clear answer. And we also have to hold the people accountable who are provocating these gatherings, right? In some instances, these gatherings are being promoted by individuals that do not mean our young people any good, right? And, this is not to make excuses for young people, but all of us have been young once upon a time, and, we're impressionable or have been impressionable. But we also have to make sure that there are families that do drop their young people off downtown to enjoy this particular section of the city. And so the wide, scope of working to prevent this, we don't want to criminalize people who have no part in some of the behavior that we've seen. Look, as a parent, particularly a 10, 12, and a 17-year-old, especially my 17-year-old who wants to move about the city on a more regular basis, I want to feel absolute confident that when he is out, just like other families send their children out, that they are in safe, productive spaces.
Right.
And again, we prevent the vast majority of these gatherings from happening. And so I know the superintendent, along with community violence interrupters and other community partners, are committed to ensuring that these trends do not become the norm.
In a press conference last week, Chicago Deputy Mayor of Community Safety, Garion Gatewood, presented numbers. These were around crime and violence, looking at the last year. So comparing 2024 and 2025, we saw 23% fewer violent crimes in Chicago, 24% fewer homicides, 31% fewer shootings. Also, new reporting from WBEZ shows that Chicago hasn't seen an April with fewer murders since 1962. So talk about what specific work city government is doing to help bring crime down.
Well, again, community safety is my top priority. And I said this when I was a candidate. I've said it as in my former role as a county commissioner, as a public school teacher. This is something that I work on every single day. And though we are incredibly happy and pleased with the direction in which we're going, where violent crime continues to go down under my administration, we still have work to do. So make no mistake about it, it's going to take all of us to ensure that safety becomes a reality for all of our residents across the city. What this is demonstrating is that many people said that my vision for Chicago would take time. And what they didn't say was that it's going to take commitment. And that's the first thing that I just want to highlight, that we have a commitment to a community safety plan that demonstrates when you have the full force of government showing up every single day, this is how you drive down violence. And so what is working specifically? One, we are investing more in our young people. That's just a direct correlation that we're seeing in many precincts and police districts across the city. The Austin neighborhood where I'm raising my family, many people know this is a beautiful part of the city, but it has been one of the most disinvested sections of the city, and violence has been unfortunately quite pervasive. In fact, one of the most violent neighborhoods in the entire city. Mm-hmm. And we saw incredible decline in the Austin neighborhood. But the Austin neighborhood was also where the most amount of young people were hired from. Almost 1,700 young people hired from this community. So there's a clear correlation between investing in our young people, helping them find opportunity and purpose. I was, with 2 schools in Inglewood this morning, and many of those young people said the same thing, continue to invest in us. The second thing is we're making Chicago more affordable. Building more affordable homes and creating economic stability for these communities helps situate these communities, and it eliminates the vacancy, which in many cases oftentimes lends itself and opens itself up to violence. The third thing is our community violence intervention, making sure that people who understand these neighborhoods can work within the most violent beats in the city of Chicago and begin to work with those families and showing support as well as opportunity. Mm-hmm. Look, I promised to hire more detectives within my first 4 years, 200 more. We've already done that. We're solving and clearing crime at a rate that's higher than we've seen in a decade. In fact, one of the deterrents to violence in the city of Chicago is when you actually solve violence. And our department, our detectives have done an exceptional job under the leadership of Superintendent Larry Snelling, which was my selection. I think the final thing is that we have created an infrastructure within community safety that is also responding to mental health crises. 40% of the 911 calls that were coming through were mental health crises. Now we have an alternative response. The 988 allows for paid professional mental health crises professionals to show up to these crises. Now, reason why that's important is, one, we decriminalize mental health, mm-hmm. but 2, it allows for law enforcement to show up to do the job that they have ultimately been called to do, which is to go after and fight crime. And so it's a combination of the full force of government using this holistic approach that has lended itself to these stronger and better trends. But look, we have a little ways to go still. And so we're going to continue to make sure that we show up with the full force of government, and we're going to need everybody to participate in order to continue to drive down crime in the city of Chicago.
Let's hear from a few more callers. First up, Serini in Logan Square. Hey, Serini, what's your question for the mayor?
Hi, Mayor Johnson.
Hi.
So my question revolves around local businesses, as I do work for one, and I work with a lot of them. And all of the robberies that have been going on, sometimes these robberies hitting multiple places at once. And so my question is, have you thought about offering any relief or maybe grants to add security measures to any of the businesses to help make these robberies less successful?
Thanks for your question, Serini.
Yeah, thank you for your question. Look, the first of all, thank you for being a part of our commercial corridor, right? This is what makes Chicago so unique, our unique 77 neighborhoods, but it's our small businesses that ultimately lend itself to, vibrancy. It's why we put forth this $1.25 billion bond investment to grow our small businesses. And many of our small businesses have already been able to benefit from these investments, and we're going to grow 525 and expand and support small businesses over the next, 3 to 4 years. What I can say is that a year ago, I talked to our superintendent about robberies in the city of Chicago. They were as high as they've ever been. Well, since we've implemented our robbery strategy, I just want people to know that there is good news, right? We have reduced robberies significantly in the city of Chicago, 35%, and in certain instances even higher. There's still more work to be done as far as special support or recovery support for businesses who are impacted by robberies. That's something that we can look into. There's a lot of work that I'm doing to rectify some of the structural financial damage that we've have had to deal with for decades in this city, and we're working to repair those structural damages so that we can invest more into our commercial corridors, invest more into building more affordable homes so that we can grow our businesses. And this robbery strategy that the superintendent and I are very pleased that we're heading in the right direction, but we do know there's still more work to be done, and I'll make sure that we look into what could possibly be made available to support these businesses as they look to recover and to repair.
Any timeline on that robbery strategy?
Well, the robbery strategy is in full effect, right?
Okay.
So we're already seeing the benefit. The strategy we implemented was just over a year ago. And so in less than a year, we were able to reduce robberies significantly in the city of Chicago. But we do know that there's still individuals that are forming these crews that our robbery strategy is looking to, because I think to the point of the caller that these are crews that usually hit spots, aggressively at once. But we have 3 new helicopters now that's helping us locate and chase down these individuals and hold them accountable. I am pleased that we are headed in the right direction, so I don't want that to be lost. And we still know we have more work to do.
Let's hear now from Paul in Woodstock with a transportation question. Hi, Paul. What's your question for the mayor?
Yes, Mayor Johnson, I do live in Woodstock, but I commute into the loop on Metro at least 3 days a week. I've heard those Save Transit Now commercials that the RTA has been running that talk about the huge funding gap that threatens the future of public transportation, including Metro and CTA and PACE. I'm concerned about anything that's going to drive more people to have to be, driving. So what are you doing to help us with this crisis?
Yeah, thank you for that question, and thank you for coming into Chicago from Woodstock those 3 days. I hope you spend all of your lunch money in Chicago and you don't pack your own lunch. I need that revenue. But in all seriousness, I do need that revenue because that's really what it comes down to, quite frankly. And to your point, the benefit of public transportation is that it alleviates the tension and the congestion that takes place. And so what we've said from the very beginning, 87% of the ridership that is produced with our public transportation system is right here in Chicago proper, right? Right now, the city of Chicago is not equitably funded as it relates to our distribution of ridership. And so our team has been working with the Chicago Transit Authority as we work collectively, one, to make sure that our transportation is safe, two, that we make sure that there's a streamlining, right? And perhaps there are better ways in which we can share services so that we can reduce some costs.
And this is on the backdrop here, RTA is facing a $700 to $730 million shortfall
that is
for 2026.
Correct. And so now there's a question in Springfield, and we put forth some ideas, particularly around revenue, especially progressive revenue, as federal dollars that we receive through the COVID-19 pandemic, as those begin to expire, finding revenue streams that allow for the system to be properly funded. I believe that there are ways in which we could share some resources and services so that we can, create more productivity. But there also has to be a commitment. And I know that there are many legislators, Senator Ram Villavelam, who chairs the Transportation Committee, had a conversation with the Senate President, the Speaker, and the Governor yesterday as well, of why it's important that we fund our public transportation system for commuters like yourself who are coming in from Woodstock, who benefit from the economy in the city of Chicago, so that you don't have to take that 1.5-hour, 3-hour commute going back and forth, maybe in some cases longer. So I'm committed to working with the General Assembly, as I have been from the very beginning, to ensure that the resources are equitably distributed and it doesn't fall on the backs of working people.
Let's take a pause right here. That's Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. He's going to stick around and continue to take your questions. Call us at 866-915-WBEZ. We're going to touch on immigration next. But first, we'll check in on the very latest news with Lisa Labuz. This is Reset. I'm your host, Sasha-Ann Simons. We are continuing our public forum with Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, and we're inviting you to call in with your question. Do you want to know about Chicago's response to threats from the federal government or his thoughts on something else? Give us a call now at 866-915-WBEZ. Again, 866-915-WBEZ. And a reminder, respect is a must this hour with Mayor Johnson. Whatever your question is, please ask the mayor respectfully. All right, Mayor, well, let's get right back to our callers. We've got Alec in Jefferson Park who's been waiting patiently on hold. Hey, Alec, what's your question for the mayor?
Hey, how are you doing? So what are you looking for in a new president of the CTA? What qualities would you like to see? And what are some of the most critical issues you'd like to see addressed by that person? Appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you and appreciate all the calls from the north side of Chicago. Look, we have to have, safe, reliable, affordable transportation in Chicago. Right? This is really, it's a matter of the scale of our economy. Will come down to our ability to create a transportation system that outlives us, right? So over the next 100 years. And so what I'm looking for is someone who understands the benefit and the beauty of public transportation, someone who has a relationship to public transportation, and is particularly someone who understands what it means to use public transportation. That's critical to me because I believe that having that shared rider experience will keep that person humble enough to remain engaged. The second thing is someone who has the high capacity to be able to run large systems, right? Look, this is, these systems in Chicago are incredibly large, and there has not been a nimbleness because these structures are so large. And so someone who understands 21st century leadership of how to get the most out of its workforce, which is leads me into this last part of your question in terms of not just what I'm looking for in a person, but the direction. We have to staff up, right? I mean, we are moving in the right direction, but we still need more train operators and bus operators. And that's critical, right? Because that allows for our system to move faster and better, right? And we've seen some signs of improvement, 11% increase in ridership, 300 million rides between our buses and our trains. We're moving in the right direction. However, we also have to have faster, more reliable express buses. And so we're already seeing what some of those investments look like, where we are investing more into our bus lanes, our Better Streets for Buses initiative, again, creating more express buses, particularly in areas where there's not a close line for an L connection. I think the final thing, too, is that I know that our transportation system has to do a better job at. It has to do a better job at communicating to riders, right? And it's not just so much 5 minutes away, 10 minutes away. It's just being able to make sure that as we look to create more express lanes, as we look to increase our workforce so that we can move we can move transportation faster through Chicago, we have to remain connected to the people who rely upon it. And this is something that's important to me, having an effective communicator so that our riders know exactly where we're going, how we are building. Really excited about the Red Line extension. There are families on the far south side who have been shut off from the economic prowess of our economy because we just didn't have public transportation that extended beyond 95th Street. And so now we're doing that. We're going to make sure that our transportation system is cleaner. So there's a commitment to once a month to power washing. Damon and Lake, the first new stop that we've seen in seems like a lifetime, right? And so we have others, Pulaski and Lake, making more renovations there. So that's the direction. Faster, more reliable, a stronger workforce, safer, someone who is nimble enough to understand how we have to communicate with riders. Those are all my big aspirations for our transportation system.
A tall order.
Yeah.
Let's jump now to Tyler in Uptown. Hey, Tyler, what's your question for the mayor?
Mayor Johnson, how's it going?
It's going well, thank you.
I have a question for you. I'm actually wondering if you've read the book Abundance by Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson. I highly recommend it.
Okay, I'll do that. I have not. I'll check it out.
I've lived in this city for almost 15 years and have rented and leased all those years, and never have I seen it more difficult to build affordable and middle-income housing in the city than it is right now. While also happening, never has rent been this high for, let's just say, a one-bedroom unit. It's just rent is crazy right now. And I think the positive that a lot of people are moving to the city, and that's a good thing. But one of the things that I've experienced is just how difficult it is in the city to get anything done because of bureaucratic red tape, zoning restrictions, approval processes that don't make any sense. So I'm curious what specific plans, not just general ideas, what specific plans or reforms does your administration have to streamline development, make it more feasible for builders to deliver housing, and just essentially make it easier for people to build housing and for those people to afford said housing?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you for that. And I share that frustration. And so that's why I signed an executive order and I charged my chief operations officer a year ago, John Robertson, to initiate what I call the Cut the Tape initiative. And that essentially gets at what the heart of what your concern is and what the frustration is, where it has been so difficult to do business in the city of Chicago because of, as I said earlier in this conversation, about how the structure is so antiquated and firm, it makes it hard to be nimble. Well, since that Cut the Tape initiative, we have streamlined processes in Chicago in a way that has reduced the amount of time that it takes to actually do development in Chicago. So what has taken on an average 178 days from the start to the end to be able to move development, we're now down to 78 days, and those times will continue to go faster. As a result of the Cut the Tape initiative, there's a few things that we've already done, because to the point that you have made, the second point that you made about how expensive it is, the reason why it's so expensive is because we don't have enough units. The reason why we don't have enough units is because there's so much bureaucracy. So the first thing we had to do was actually get at the bureaucracy, which we have. The second thing is we've built almost 4,000 affordable homes since I've been in office. 1,800 are under construction. We'll have another 4,600 completed in the next 16 to 18 months. We're building affordable homes even downtown. 1,100 new homes that we're building by using old office space downtown, converting that into housing, 30% of which will be affordable. There's nowhere else in the country where they're literally building affordable homes in their downtown central corridor. That work has to continue to expand and move with some expediency. It's the heart of my drive as mayor of the city of Chicago. We have to repopulate the city with working people because, to your point, we don't want to be New York. The average price of a home in New York is $1.1 million. The average price of a home in Los Angeles is about $800,000, almost $900,000 to afford an affordable home. When my wife and I purchased our first home, our only home, we needed 2 government programs to purchase a home that was $150,000. I was a public school teacher. She was a public employee. Our combined income, $75,000, $80,000. We had a child on the way. Probably not the best time to have a child, but somehow, he's almost 18 years old now. So one, we have cut the tape. So we're streamlining the process, shortening the process so more people want to do development. 2, we're actually building. Another big program that I should lay out is the missing middle, where we are giving incentive to developers for owner-occupied homes, where individuals can not only develop these spaces that are vacant on the west and south side of Chicago primarily, they live in them, build generational wealth, and we incentivize it with city land so they don't have to deal with the arduous task of being able to purchase the land, go through the process. 6 developers, 5 of which are black, 3 are women. We are moving in the right direction, and we're going to continue to move aggressively with development, particularly for housing, and making it affordable. I promise the last thing, green social housing is another initiative that we're putting forward to create essentially a government nonprofit entity that allows for a revolving loan to continue to build more affordable units, and then to make sure that that affordability remains in place. Because what happens is you build property, you build homes, and then, of course, natural accrue and gentrification takes place. This is a way to stave off gentrification while not only building more affordable homes, but keeping the ability to build affordable rental units.
Yeah. Good time now to bring in Tony in Beverly. Hey, Tony.
Southside, finally.
Good afternoon, Mayor John.
Good afternoon.
So my question kind of speaks to the previous question. He was speaking on renters. I'm speaking on home ownership. What is your alternative to the property tax hike that we're receiving in Chicago? It is my belief that these property tax hikes are making it unaffordable for us to own property in Chicago. It's driving people out of the city as well as the state of Illinois. There has to be an alternative besides property tax hike.
I agree. Thank you, Tony, for that question. So right now, the state of Illinois, we have a flat income tax, right? And we attempted to raise that income tax so that it was more equitable, where working people will receive a tax break, and those folks making $1 million or more would have an increase. The city of Chicago embraced it overwhelmingly. I believe 72% of Chicagoans said yes to a progressive income tax. Black Chicagoans in particular voted at a higher rate, I believe over 80%. The rest of the state drug us down. And so as a result, it didn't pass. And so we have to look at progressive revenue. The fact of the matter is this, particularly with these Trump tariffs, that as things become more expensive and as the federal government shows an incredible amount of animus towards working people in cities like Chicago, which I still do not get. We as a city and us as a collective state have to work towards challenging those corporations and the more wealthier, more affluent individuals to have a more equitable distribution of revenue. Because if we don't, to your point, the tendency is to rely upon and lean on the structures that we are most familiar with. Unfortunately, as a city, a good portion of the revenue streams that we have access to, I need state approval to be able to make those shifts. There are very few mechanisms that I have control over outside of property taxes in particular that allow for us to generate revenue. I need the entire listening audience and the entire city of Chicago to come together as we did, as we fought for a progressive income tax, as we look towards things like a real estate transfer tax that happens on all property, but everybody pays the same rate. We put forth a proposal with a slight increase for property over $1 million or $1.5 million, of which 97% of folks would have received a tax break on transferring a property that would have generated conservatively at $100 million more dollars. So there are pathways for progressive revenue. As the leader of this city, I'm committed to calling for it, but I need the people of Chicago to organize, call for it collectively, challenge not just our local body, but challenge the state of Illinois as good Democrats and as good progressives to look at better ways in which we can generate revenue to keep working families in the city of Chicago.
Let's talk immigration a little bit. Well, President Trump is threatening to withhold $3.5 billion from Chicago because of the city's sanctuary status. And we're talking money that's vital for services here and for infrastructure in the city. At what point do you make concessions, Mayor?
Well, let me just say this, that what the president is proposing, there are a number of us around the country who don't believe it's constitutional. So to concede to something that is unconstitutional doesn't uphold the values of our democracy. And that's why we are using every single tool, much like what happened during the civil rights movement. We do have to organize and march and rally. Today is May Day. I don't think it's a coincidence.
Yeah.
Right? The labor movement birthed out of the city of Chicago and the struggle for justice, for working people. That's something that is the strength and the power of our democracy. And we have to continue to make those strides towards justice. Mm-hmm. The second thing, of course, is legal action, taking it to the courts, passing legislation as well. You know, let me just lift up the fact that being a welcoming city makes us safer, period, point blank. The first black mayor in the history of Chicago, Mayor Harold Washington, with the first black corporate council in the history of Chicago, Mr. James Montgomery, which he'll be here this month, 93 years old, and we're going to honor him. He was the one that sent the note to Mayor Harold Washington saying that our local law enforcement, in order for them to keep trust with the community, we cannot have them dubbing as federal agents. And so this whole notion of trying to force local law enforcement to behave as federal agents doesn't keep us safe. And so what we have to do is continue to fight, to protest, to take it to the courts, take it to the streets, take it to our legislative bodies to ensure that our democracy is withheld.
I'm glad you mentioned that we're a welcoming city, though, because even with the ordinance, with the Illinois Trust Act, immigrants with and without legal status in this city, they're scared. You know, they're moving church services online. We've just heard Cinco de Mayo celebrations are canceled this year. So how are you working to alleviate the real fear that's happening?
Yeah, and thank you for acknowledging that level of anxiety and fear. And that's why we withheld our status as a welcoming city. Look, as a former social studies teacher, which I hope I didn't just cause everybody to nod off as soon as I said social studies teacher. I hope you all stayed awake in your history classes. But I've never seen a time in our history where fear created ultimate transformation for working people. In fact, fear has brought the opposite. It has destroyed societies. And that's why, I was proud to defend our city in Congress. that we will remain a welcoming city and that we alleviate the anxiety and fears that people have. And I know all of it hasn't gone away, but I want people of the city of Chicago to be assured that the city of Chicago will always be a welcoming city as long as I'm mayor. And we're going to protect all of our communities. This is a city that was birthed, and established by a Black Haitian immigrant and a Potawatomi woman who set up a trade post in the city of Chicago, and they saw the future of our city as the global capital of the world. And so immigrants from all over the world, whether they're Jewish, Asian, or Mexican, or Italian, Irish, Polish, descendants of slaves like my roots coming up from Salis, Mississippi. This is a city that has embraced every single community. Now, we've had our struggles over the years, right, with deep segregation. But one thing that we know for sure, that what makes our city so soulful is the diversity of all of our 77 neighborhoods.
Yeah, we're going to take a break shortly, but I do want to ask, because, as we talk about the president potentially making huge cuts here, I hear you recently filed a lawsuit against Trump and against DOGE. What can you share with us about that?
Well, working people are so critical to our democracy, and this lawsuit really gets at the substance of why I ran for mayor, is that the way our city is comprised, it's the most diverse economy, one of the most diverse economies in the world. Not one industry has more than 14% of our overall GDP, which makes us strong. 20% of the world's fresh water right here. And what this lawsuit is getting at is making sure that we protect working people, right? That the executive branch has to be checked by the legislative branch, that this is unconstitutional. He has no authority to just, decree, if you will, the erosion and the eradication of our public accommodations. And there are cities across the country and states, who have joined in this effort to make sure that we have real check and balance. We are a democracy. We have branches of government. And right now, this president is not only ignoring, but he is, literally offending the very fabric of who we are as a democracy. And we cannot normalize it. We got to make sure that we use every single legal action, take it to the streets, legislative action to protect our humanity and to make sure that our democracy continues to evolve.
That's Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, who is sticking around to continue taking your questions. Our number, once again, 866-915-WBEZ. We're going to touch on city finances next and more of your questions. First, though, over to Lisa Lavis. And we're back now with more Reset. I'm Sasha-Ann Simons, and we're still here asking Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, who's here with me in studio, to answer your questions. Give us a call at 866-915-WBEZ if you want to chat with the mayor. I want to jump right to the phones, Mayor, because we've got a lot of people waiting, starting with Sharon in Edgebrook. Hey, Sharon, what's your question?
Hi, how are you? My name is Sharon. Hi, Brandon Johnson.
Hi.
I am a mother of a student who attends Wildwood Elementary School who has been subjected to ongoing physical, emotional, and sexual abuse for 3 years, and I found out last year. I have taken every responsible step to bring these matters to light, including submitting a notarized letter directly to your office detailing the severity of what my child has endured at Wildwood Elementary. Since taking these actions, I have not only been ignored, but I have faced severe retaliation for standing up for my daughter's safety, dignity, and rights. This is a crisis, and, the silence is unacceptable. So my question to you is, can someone, from your office take this seriously and look into my notarized letter that I sent back in January? This is not just a school issue. It's a human rights issue. It's a leadership issue. My child deserves protection. I deserve to be heard. Enough is enough, and I'm demanding that a representative from your office reach out to me regarding my situation.
Thanks for your call, Sharon.
Yeah, thank you for the call, and I'm deeply sorry that this is what you've experienced in our public system. And if you just hold on, and we'll take your information, and I'll make sure that someone follows up with you immediately.
Thanks, Sharon. Let's jump to Doug. Doug is in the South Loop. Hey, Doug.
Hi, Mayor Johnson. First of all, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy day to take questions from Chicagoans. This is just fantastic. And everybody wants you to succeed. It's a tough job, I know. My question pertains to traffic safety. And I feel, I'll try to make this really brief, I feel as though the people who are opposed to traffic light cameras and speed cameras are those who just want to speed and run red lights. I don't understand anybody who would be against that, but in the core of the city, I feel as though there should be red light cameras on every single intersection down Michigan Avenue. It's just absolutely insane. But more importantly, I'm going to move over now to Lakeshore Drive. It almost looks as though Lakeshore Drive is this Wild West oasis. It is completely unpoliced. There are no speed cameras. People just go 90 miles an hour all the time, and every single day in the news, there's somebody who is, car's been split in half by, hitting a tree going down Lakeshore Drive. Why is Lakeshore Drive? It's a two-part question, so maybe if you have time, you can do the first part.
We've just got time for the first part, which I think you're asking, why aren't there more speed cameras on Lakeshore Drive? Go ahead, Mayor.
And thank you for the question and the acknowledgement that we have to do better. Traffic fatalities have gone down about 27% over the last year, and we're going to continue to put measures in place to optimize safety. One of the things that we are looking at, particularly around Lakeshore Drive, you're absolutely right. There's some infrastructure needs that we have there that we're working with the state of Illinois as well, because it is very difficult to move around in the city. And believe it or not, I hope this doesn't stress people out, but the city of Chicago, we conservatively can fit 400,000 more human beings into the city. That's the conservative number. And again, as I expressed, that's my priority, right, to develop our corridors where we create more home ownership, particularly for working people. And this is why our public transportation system is so important, so vital, so that we create bus-only lanes and that we are able to move traffic faster through the city of Chicago without harming folks, right? So more pedestrian lanes, more bike lanes, and again, bus-only lanes. But this is something that has been in the works for some time. I'm confident that under my tenure as mayor, that we will have a fully invested infrastructure plan that rectifies some of the areas that you've just called out as a challenge on Lakeshore Drive in particular.
Yeah, thanks for that. You were in Springfield this week. You were meeting with Governor Pritzker and other lawmakers trying to get more money, talking about the CTA and Chicago public schools. The state, though, also has to tighten the belt right now, Mayor. So what exactly was your pitch, and what do you think would be reasonable from the state? Yeah,
so we've put forth a reasonable presentation for the state of Illinois. We recognize that budgets across America are strained, and that has a lot to do with the new leadership at the federal level and how damaging the Trump administration has been to working people across America. And so we built a one system initiative in partnership with the state of Illinois. Very pleased with where we're going. Homelessness is another issue that we're tackling in the city of Chicago. So we've increased the number of shelter beds by 126%. For the first time in a decade, not a single family that is called for shelter is on a waiting list. Now we have to do more work to reconfigure our shelter beds so that we create more beds for single adults. But all in all, we're moving in the right direction. The ultimate goal is to put people on the pathway to sustainability with their own home. Yeah. Right. And so the governor expressed support. We just wanted to make sure that it stays in the budget. Just because something is proposed in a budget doesn't mean it's going to stay there. And so that one system initiative, roughly $91 million, that can help support our efforts in the city of Chicago, we wanted to make sure that stayed there. We also looked at the categoricals for the Chicago Public Schools, special education, transportation, and bilingual education. Right now, there's a potential for the reduction of those reimbursement dollars. We want to see those dollars increase in those particular categories, and we're going to remain optimistic that happens. Yeah. But also, we're looking at other measures like the surcharge for telecom and cell phone usage, so that the revenue that can be generated from those particular efforts could actually help contribute towards the reduction of our budget deficit, but also making sure that we're making critical investments. Those were some of the top lines there. There's the personal property replacement tax, which allows, big businesses to essentially write off certain losses. We want to shift that cap so that there's more dollars that can be received throughout the state of Illinois, and of course the city of Chicago will benefit from it. So these are things that we've been in conversations with.
Yeah, and are we going to see
months.
more of these conversations? Because some of your critics have said that you haven't worked effectively enough with lawmakers in Springfield during especially those first 2 years of your tenure.
Well, look, there are folks who are always going to criticize the mayor of the city of Chicago. I've shown up with the full force of my government with the General Assembly from the very moment I was sworn in, right? I addressed the joint session, the first mayor to do that in a very long time. The Senate President, Don Harmon, is where I got my first job. The Speaker Welch helped me become a county commissioner. These are Lakeisha Collins and I worked together as we pushed back against the shooting and the death of Laquan McDonald when we were organizers. Will Guzzardi, we helped people like him get elected. Rob Martwick. These are people who have been friends of mine. So I'm going to continue to show up and work on behalf of the people of Chicago. And the expectation is that these members of the General Assembly also show up on behalf of the people of Chicago. So that's a collective effort.
So far, you said that you will not consider layoffs or changes in city services to close the budget gap that we're facing. With the added strain of a potential loss of federal dollars, like we were talking about earlier, you've recently said that you have to have everything on the table. So does that include layoffs and unpaid furlough days? And what else, potentially?
Yeah. Well, it doesn't start with cuts. I want to make sure that that's clear. We don't start our conversation off with cutting services. In the first 2 years that I've been in office, we have not had to lay off people and cut services. In fact, investments continue to go up and violence continues to go down. It's just that straightforward, right? Where we've hired young people. We have $11 billion of new development in Chicago from last year, $8 billion of new investment already this year, where there's real economic development that has happened throughout the city of Chicago. So my goal is to continue to make sure that we're investing in people and violence continues to go down, and we're off to a solid start. So I put together a working group. I was the only candidate who put forth a financial plan for the city of Chicago, which we projected that this is the challenge that we would have. And the challenge that we are experiencing right now is because over years, administrations refuse to pay into retirement. And so our pension liability and our debt services are overwhelmingly dragging us down. And so I'm bringing together everyone, business leaders, civic leaders, political leaders, to help think through, community labor, right, will all be at the table to help us put forth ideas and solutions that can ultimately ensure that we continue to invest in people and that we continue to drive violence down the city of Chicago.
Yeah, got just a few seconds, Mayor. I want to squeeze in one last caller. Here's Elsie in the Gold Coast. Hey,
Hi,
Elsie.
Mayor.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. You're halfway through your term, and I want to know what you wish you knew when you started that you know now.
Give me 40 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, I really wish I would have known really the gravity of buses coming in from the South when the governor, Abbott attacked our city and cities across America, and there was a refusal of Congress to actually respond to our immigration crisis. I wish I would have known, honestly, we could have perhaps better prepared or planned for it. But one of the things that I do know now that I didn't know then was just how uniquely situated the city of Chicago is. When you're in Chicago, sometimes you don't always get a chance to visit all the neighborhoods. As mayor of the city of Chicago, I literally get to see the full scope of Chicago, and I wish more Chicagoans could see that. The mom and pop shops, the hopes and aspirations of families, the business leaders, the people who are working every single day to ensure that Chicago becomes, a safer place. But we truly are the greatest freaking city in the world, and I'm so humbled to have served for these first couple of years.
Sounds like a great place to leave it. That's Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. Our thanks to you for your time today.
Thank you.
And that is it for Reset. Remember, if you missed our conversation with Chicago's mayor, catch up this afternoon on the Reset podcast. We drop episodes on weekday mornings and afternoons, plus a bonus episode on Saturdays. You can find WBEZ's Reset wherever you listen to podcasts. Tomorrow on the show, it is our weekly news recap. Be sure to tune in for our recap at noon. I'm Sasha-Ann Simons. Thanks so much for listening. And to our callers, thank you for your great questions. Have a wonderful day, and we'll meet again tomorrow.